McEnroe, 1990, default. John McEnroe in the 1990 Australian Open, round of 16. The match was under control. The opponent was Mikhail Pernfors, a solid player but not someone who could overpower McEnroe when McEnroe was focused. Then, the shift happened. First, the racket strike. McEnroe smashed his racket and that was an automatic violation. Then he confronted the chair with full direct aggression. That gave him violation number 2. Under the newly hardened rule set, that placed him one step from removal. McEnroe kept escalating. He went after the officials at courtside. He continued escalating even when the referee arrived and was eventually defaulted the match. There was no calculation. There was no awareness of the new structure of penalty enforcement. He eliminated himself. This was not passion. This was a failure to adapt to a rule environment that he believed still worked like the 1980s circuit. He had a wide-open path to the title. He walked himself out of the tournament because he treated his temper like a tool instead of something that required discipline. Self-destruction at a championship level looks exactly like that. A player can only ignore new standards for so long before they collide with them. Nalbandian, 2006, match point over rule. David Nalbandian in the 2006 Australian Open. Match point. He had control. A ball hit the line. The line judge made the right call. The chair umpire reversed that correct call. That single moment did more than replay a point. It detonated the internal nerve state of the match. Nalbandian lost the following 2 points and then the entire match. This is not about one call. This is about the way a player's internal rhythm collapses when authority intervenes without justification. Tennis is not simply physical. It is about continuous timing, breathing patterns, shot selection rhythm, and psychological pressure stacking. Interference at the wrong moment is a direct strike at a player's center. Nalbandian did not simply lose. He was cut out of his own momentum by an external mistake. Djokovic, 2020 U.S. Open default. Novak Djokovic at the U.S. Open 2020. A flick forward of the ball during frustration. It traveled behind him and hit a line official. The contact did not carry intent. That did not matter. The rule is immediate removal upon striking an official. Season changed in 1 second. Title chance gone. Ranking impact severe. Public reaction loud and unforgiving. The incident shows how thin the margin is between control and collapse in elite tennis. One casual physical action, taken during emotional frustration, changed his entire season in a single instant. It was not tactical. It was not strategic. It was a lapse of bodily control under pressure. That is the cost. The higher the stage, the harsher the penalty for carelessness. Federer, 2019 Wimbledon collapse. Roger Federer in the 2019 Wimbledon final. 5th set on center court against Djokovic. Federer reached double match point. He held the racket advantage in the rally patterns. Then, everything tightened. He stopped stepping into his ground strokes. He shifted toward neutral patterns. He went safe. The instinct to avoid error took control. He gave Djokovic the chance to survive. A champion of Federer's level understands that hesitation is the fastest route to collapse in critical points. He did not attack when he held advantage. Djokovic showed no hesitation. That contrast decided the match. The match was not taken from Federer. He handed momentum back by choosing caution over pressure. This is not a moral failure. It is a clear moment where fear of error overtook the will to close. Coria, 2004 French final choke. Guillermo Coria in the 2004 French Open final. 2 sets up. His movement was sharp. His baseline patterns were clean. He had the match under full grip. Then, his shoulder tightened. His timing dropped. That is when panic stepped in. Instead of continuing to strike the ball with conviction, he started tapping it back. He waited for his opponent to miss. That is always the beginning of collapse. Once the brain shifts from attacking to waiting, the match becomes a countdown to defeat. Coria lost the final, but the deeper damage was psychological. He never returned to the same level. This is the type of collapse that ends careers. Not because the body cannot play, but because the mind no longer trusts itself in decisive moments. Borg, early retirement at 26. Bjorn Borg, ending his career at 26. He dominated the sport. He had rhythm patterns that could grind down almost anyone. Yet he walked away because the pressure was constant, heavy, and unending. He reached a level where each match was measured against perfection. The intensity of expectation drained him. He left while still capable of winning. The exit reshaped the sport. His rivalries did not get full arcs. His presence vanished and left a vacuum. This was not a strategic retirement. It was a human reaction to the demands of always needing to win. Tennis requires a level of emotional durability that is not visible from the outside. Borg reached a psychological saturation point and exited, instead of breaking publicly. Agassi, skipping Wimbledon years. Andre Agassi chose to skip Wimbledon throughout his early career. He disliked the court and the conditions. Instead of adapting his game, he removed one of the 4 major tournaments from his schedule. That cost him seasons of technical growth. When he eventually chose to play, he learned how to flatten his strokes, improve his forward movement on grass, and he won the title. The ability was there all along. The delay was caused by personal preference blocking competitive development. This is a clear example of talent being held back by an unwillingness to broaden skill. A player who waits to adapt always loses years that cannot be reclaimed. Safin, lifestyle, wasted talent. Marat Safin. He had everything: raw power, clean touch, footwork with natural balance, vision for patterns that many professionals never develop. Yet he treated tennis like something that could be done on his terms without discipline. He partied. He trained inconsistently. His emotional state controlled his performance level. He could beat the strongest players one day and collapse against average opponents the next. Greatness in tennis comes from repetition of high output, not from occasional brilliance. Safin delivered highlight matches, but never built the foundation required for sustained dominance. Natural talent without consistent structure cannot survive at the top. Kyrgios, no training commitment. Nick Kyrgios made a choice. Not once, repeatedly. He had the physical ability to strike from impossible angles, to take time away, to control pace, to redirect pace without effort. Yet he chose minimal training. He admitted in interviews that he did not practice at the level expected of a top professional. He openly stated that he did not care about improving day to day. That is not a mystery. That is a self-imposed limitation. Kyrgios could destroy experienced players when locked in. He could break elite game plans with speed and touch that most players never develop. However, tennis is not about occasional high peaks. It is about regular high output. When a player trains lightly, the body loses base stamina. When emotions control effort, match quality spikes and crashes. He did that for years. The result is obvious. He had windows where he could have pushed deep into Grand Slams. Instead, he left those opportunities unused. It is not about whether he entertained the crowd. It is about wasted competitive potential at the top of the sport. Murray, delayed hip surgery. Andy Murray delaying hip surgery in 2017 and 2018 is a case of overconfidence in recovery. He believed that rehabilitation would bring him back without invasive procedure. He attempted alternate recovery routes. He fought through pain. He tried to train. He tried to return. Every month he delayed, structural deterioration increased. Once the hip joint collapses past the threshold, performance does not just decline. It becomes unmanageable. When he finally accepted that surgery was required, he had already lost key years of his physical prime. His movement, the foundation of his entire game, was gone. Murray's control over rallies depended on his ability to turn defense into attack, with precise angles and endurance. Once the joint movement range was compromised, that identity could not be recovered fully. Zverev, 2020 U.S. Open double faults. Alexander Zverev in the 2020 U.S. Open final held the match firmly. He had the scoreboard. He had physical momentum. Then tension entered his service motion. His first ball delivery collapsed. He double faulted at critical points. When the mind tightens in high-pressure stage play, the motion can become segmented. That is exactly what happened. His arm speed slowed, his toss height shifted, and his entire kinetic chain lost flow. The result was direct point losses. High pressure does not forgive hesitation. He let internal panic override muscle memory. That final was not lost because of a matchup disadvantage. It was lost because the ability to trust his delivery under pressure failed when needed most. Players practice those moments every day. Yet when lights intensify, only those who maintain nerve control execute. Zverev did not. Sampras refused equipment evolution. Pete Sampras, refusing to modernize his equipment near the end of his career, is a clear example of attachment to identity. He kept using an 85 square inch frame, while the rest of the field migrated to larger head sizes that offered more margin, more spin, and more forgiveness. The modern, baseline-heavy environment required more tolerance for off-center contact. Sampras relied on precision from a smaller head. As age reduced reaction time slightly, the margin of error shrank to nearly nothing. Other players gained free pace from technology. Sampras stuck with feel-based performance. He accelerated his decline by refusing to adjust. This was not about disrespect to modern tennis. It was an unwillingness to modify habits in response to evolution of the field. Champions who adapt extend dominance. Champions who freeze in one configuration accelerate their exit. Wimbledon boycott, 1973. Player revolt. The 1973 Wimbledon boycott was not an emotional protest. It was a structural power conflict. The International Lawn Tennis Federation suspended Nikola Pilic for not participating in a national team event. The ATP players believed that they should control their own scheduling and participation, not governing bodies. Wimbledon sided with the federation. The ATP responded by withdrawing their players, resulting in 81 competitors refusing to participate. The result was a draw filled with secondary players and qualifiers, changing the competitive level. The long-term effect mattered more. The boycott showed that players could remove their labor and shift control in the sport. It accelerated the formation of a unified player voice. The mistake was on Wimbledon and ILTF leadership, who chose inflexible authority instead of negotiation. Seles, 1993, security failure. Court security failure that led to Monica Seles being stabbed in 1993 remains the most severe safety collapse in professional tennis. A fan walked directly to her chair during a changeover, leaned in, and stabbed her between the shoulder blades. There was no barrier, no guard intercepted, no preventative structure. She was world number one. There was already tension in the environment due to rivalry narratives. Security should have been layered, visible, and proactive. Instead, access to players was unprotected. The entire sport shifted after that incident. Physical distance from the court was increased. Security personnel presence changed. Metal barriers were installed. The stabbing did not just injure a player physically, it changed the mental environment for every top player. Every athlete after that played with the knowledge that fan proximity is not automatically safe. A sport that relies on enclosed arenas must treat player protection as fundamental. It was not treated that way until disaster occurred. 2004, officiating disaster. Serena Williams versus Jennifer Capriati, US Open 2004. This match was defined by incorrect officiating. One of Serena's clean baseline strikes landed well inside and was called out. A Capriati drive that landed wide was called good. A first ball landing visibly in the box was called out. These were not borderline calls. These were direct misreads. Each call changed the direction of key points. The chair umpire did not intervene. The match outcome turned on errors that had nothing to do with player execution. The public reaction was immediate. This was the match that forced tennis to adopt electronic review. 2009 Foot Fault Meltdown. Serena Williams versus Kim Clijsters in 2009 US Open semifinal is one of the most widely cited officiating interference sequences in modern tennis. At 5-6, 15-30 under maximum tension, a foot fault was called on a wide first delivery. In elite matches, borderline foot faults are rarely called in final stage points. unless the contact is obvious. This one was marginal. The match was in balance. The official inserted a technical enforcement into the highest leverage moment. Serena reacted with direct confrontation. That confrontation escalated. The penalty that followed ended the match. This was not simply an emotional reaction. It was the collision of two forces, a player under extreme competitive pressure and an official applying rule enforcement without situational awareness. Fans remember the explosion more than the tennis. Serena Williams' outburst in that match defined more than one tournament. It shaped how chair umpires interact with top players in high-pressure situations. After that, officials became more cautious in late-match enforcement.